Hello, Chickchang back with part 3 of Halo Silent Storm. If you missed either of the first 2 parts, they will be in the description below. We will be starting from where we last left off, with the Spartans going on a secret mission unknown to the commander of the task force, Hector Nieto, and the Covenant response. So, without further delay, let's begin. The Spartans and Johnson had made the jump from Biko to Eidolon, where they were looking at the fleet of ships orbiting the planet, trying to figure out what each of the different supply ships were, wanting to take out munitions ships first, and then the food supply second. It would hamper the progress of the Covenant for a while, buying more time for the UNSC to try and figure out how they were going to fight back on a larger scale. However, because they are unsure of what is what, they discuss what they should do next. Dr. Halsey walks in and tells them that she knows what ships are the munitions ships for sure. And after Johnson speaks of his skepticism, she explains how she knows, and that, well, she has known for pretty much the whole time that they've been there. But because of known traitors amongst the UNSC, she didn't want to reveal anything too soon and ruin the mission. Everyone else wonders why the spies haven't been dealt with, and it's well because Halsey is trying to use them to trick the Covenant, and reveals that she has known that Nieto is a spy since the very first debriefing when he revealed John's age. She went to sweep her room for bugs and found, well, plenty. The Spartans then check their Mjolnir to make sure that they haven't been compromised as well. Later on, they watch as gold and green teams are on their way to the targets, another group of munitions freighters. Flying in Basilards, they will explode, sending debris to camouflage the Spartans when they go EVA. The other part of the entire operation was Blue Team taking the captured Banshees and following another set of Basilards, destroying them, and rendezvousing with the Banshee patrol, and then board the munitions ship, plant havocs, and dip out and watch them explode. At least that was the plan. If they are successful in this, the Covenant map they captured from the downed ship will be more figured out. Blue Team boards their damaged looking Banshees and get ready to disembark. Once the hangar is depressurized, they spot the Banshee squadron chasing after the Basilards. One of the UNSC vessels drops back and fires all its Archer missiles, causing the Banshees to scatter. This is when Blue Team dips out and attacks its 3 Basilards that are designed to be destroyed, creating a bit of cover for Blue Team as well. Once within the enemy squadron, the Covenant tries to make contact with the Banshees. John and the rest of Blue Team stay quiet since they don't really know any of the protocols, and hope that the damage to the Banshees will make it look like comm trouble. They eventually pass inspection and regroup. Because of all the planning that goes into each mission, the small inconveniences are easy to deal with. However, Green and Gold Teams Havocs detonate, causing an EMP shockwave to occur, which disabled every single Banshee in range, including all of those in Blue Team. So they go EVA again, while John, Fred, and Kelly all head towards different munition ships. Linda watches over Kelly and Fred, while Sergeant Johnson watches over John as they make their approach. Also, Avery left his Havoc to detonate, that way none of the aliens would be able to report what they saw. John gets frustrated when Linda has Johnson cover him because he would prefer that Fred and Kelly have individual support, but Avery gets him to focus since they can't change course now. They also realize that they no longer have to board in order to place the bombs. After all, the munitions ships were still skimming gas, so shields would have to be down in order to do that. They can just attach the Havocs to the outside and let them detonate from there. When Banshees start to head to intercept him, John makes the point that if it were up to John, he would have no help. Thankfully, the Seraphs chased after the Prowlers, but anything more than one Banshee would be kind of a problem for one person to deal with. Johnson starts firing past John at the incoming enemies. One of the Banshees seemed to either be hit or just leave because of the incoming fire, but then the rest opened fire on John. Granted, being as far away as they were no immediate threat, but the closer they got, the more accurate they got. And that would be a problem for John since he can't avoid the fire. It was a death trap. Avery tells John to abort, but he refuses, and then tells John to keep firing. John unloads his grenade launcher, which pauses the plasma for a little bit, but it ends up restarting once he stops shooting. Since his thruster pack was giving off so much heat, they were able to easily locate him. In order to counter this, John turned his thruster since he no longer needed to sync up with the Covenant vessel. He just needed to fly by and be in contact long enough to attach the bomb and go flying by. Johnson keeps trying to get him to abort and to stop trying to be a hero. But after getting the Havoc to its target, John finally responds, telling Sergeant that he really needs to stop treating the Spartan like a kid. Then the nuke detonates, which causes the heat inside his armor to go well above the recommended limits, but since it was still reading the heat, that meant John was still alive, so everything was all good. Back with the Covenant commander, Nizat was in the middle of glassing Biko, frustrated that he had to destroy the planet when he had planned to take it over and use it as a forward operation base. But because of the humans' defiance, he was enjoying the deaths that he was inflicting upon them. Not only that, but while he was distracted here, the humans had attacked his support fleet in Eidolon, which would for sure bring him shame by the prophets. Survey praises him on what he has done against Biko, but wonders if he should stop using all the resources until they are able to obtain more, which does make sense to me. Nizat feels that if they were to stop, 1, the glassing wouldn't take full effect unless the steady stream of plasma continues. Second, it would show the humans how much they depend on the carrier gas. The first blade appears behind them, stating that Survey is probably worried about the human counterattack. Nizat wonders if the worries are warranted, and Survey jumps in, dismissing anything the first blade says, since apparently he has been nothing but incorrect. Zatulai glares at the minor prophet before walking to Nizat. The commander defends him, stating that without the information about the boarding possibility, they may have lost 50 ships attacking Biko instead of 5. But Survey doesn't care about that, since the first blade's information means nothing apparently. It is also revealed that while he hasn't killed one yet, he knows the names of the Spartans a part of the task force. Torturing the Black Daggers that they had captured had revealed a little bit of information, although it took the Jiralhane playing a game called Tossers to break them. Tearing the limbs off each human was too difficult for comrades to watch. However, they ran out of humans before being able to learn much more. Survey keeps trying to diminish what Zatulai has done, and Nizat had enough. He would hear the rest of what Zatulai had to say without interruption. Nizat asks why the rebels didn't warn them of the attack, and the First Blade claims that they were misled and were not aware of the attacks happening themselves. Zatulai tells Nizat that while it's possible, it is the second time listening to the human insurrectionists had brought catastrophe. Survey actually guesses correctly here, stating that the task force may know there's a spy amongst them and is using it to their advantage, which they agree is also a possibility. The minor prophet once again speaks on his worry about running out of carrier gas, but Nizat tells him that they need not worry since another flotilla was brought forward and will be there soon after picking up the surviving ships from Edelon. Zatulai freaks out, confirming what he had just said, and then tells the commander that the humans are not going to be where they expect. Because they had captured the Kelgate, they are most likely going to attack Zoest, a Covenant world and operating base. Survey spazzes out, worrying about an attack on High Charity, and claims that they should retreat to defend it, once again dismissing anything the First Blade says. Nizat disagrees, since High Charity has a large force defending it already, and Zoest only has a rapid response flotilla. Survey argues against this for a bit, but Nizat shuts him down. They will meet the humans at Zoest. On board the Vanishing Point, Halsey is still working to learn more about the Kelgate that they had captured. After the recent attack against the Covenant and tracking reinforcement movements, she had figured out the different locations on the Star Hollow were Harvest, Edelon, and Netherop, eventually narrowing it down to where the world was that was being used to supply the Covenant force. With the help of Deja, her AI, assuming that the Covenant had instant interstellar communications, it had to be within 5 days' travel of them, and the only gravity well within that range was near a transit node, Badra, which just so happened to be Zoest. During the entire conversation with the AI, she keeps pausing to make cleach noises because the data miner that was uploaded to Deja by Naito, or one of his minions, had damaged her. But she would deal with it for now because she could continue to use Naito to trick the insurrection and the Covenant. Colonel Crowder shows up per Halsey's request, and as she walks to the door to let him in, she is described as a woman of striking figure, even though now she was a mother of a 1-year-old named Miranda, yes, Miranda Keys, who occupied all of her non-working thoughts, so she does care about her daughter. She just believes that defeating the Covenant is more important than being a mother. Honestly, it's kinda true, sadly. She opens the door, greeting the Colonel with a big smile, walking him across to her private room, seducing the Colonel the entire way. Once inside, she drops the act and tells him that it's safe for them to talk, since she sweeps for scanning devices 3 times a day. Crowther is still a little flustered, but is a good sport about it, almost seeming relieved. She then asks what they are going to do about Hector Naito before he tries to get her Spartans killed again. And now for the big finale. On board the Vanishing Point, deep in space. 4 weeks since the battles on Seoba, John is going over everything in his head. It had taken them 2 weeks to travel to transit node Badra and find the planet that Halsey had tracked using the Star Hollow, and he would have been confident in being able to complete the mission. However, there was still an obvious hitch: Naito. Standing in the hangar and seeing the man across the bay was infuriating to him, to the point that Johnson told him to smile in order to get his body to relax. Even in his Mjolnir, he looked tense, so he smiles and waves, which causes Naito to smile and wave back. John asks if he can just kill Naito, but Crowther tells him that he can't because it would alienate the entire crew that looks up to him, so it was a bad idea. Things had changed in the relationship between Crowther and John. While Crowther didn't apologize for his past treatment of the Spartans, they had been going over the new plans together and adjusted it to fit the Spartan special abilities. There was one more thing that Crowther wanted to do for John in order to make the mission successful. It is at this moment that Spartan 117 jumps 4 ranks to Master Chief Petty Officer. At first, John hesitates to take it, but Avery and Crowther let him know that it's basically an order. Just do it. Crowther was told that he had to do whatever it took to complete the mission, and this was one of them. There were plenty of ODSTs that would outrank him otherwise, and many others that think they outrank him. The insignia was the only thing that would tell the Black Daggers that John was in charge. Unfortunately, there was still one thing that was going to be an issue with the newly appointed Master Chief. He was willing to risk his life in any situation. Being the leader that they needed him to be, he would need to trust others to be able to do the job, because if he keeps risking his life every chance he gets, he won't be a leader for long. They part at this time, but before Johnson leaves with Prowler, him and John have what could be said as a final moment between the two. Obviously not, but they don't know that yet. Where Johnson just reiterates what was said before by Crowder, and then John thanks Avery for teaching him everything that he didn't learn on Reach. Blue team is getting ready and had found bugs on 2 of the Prowlers themselves. Naito obviously wasn't trusting the pilots for updates, but Linda is worried that when John tries to take command, they may not follow his instructions, which is kind of the point of the new insignia. The plan of the attack against the planet designated Naraka by the UNSC was to have Dagger Force, led by Naito, attack first with the ODSTs to get attention of the Covenant flotilla, while Sierra Force would come in a few minutes later to attack the defensive ring itself and infiltrate the orbital facilities. Also, by the way, Naraka is Zoest. However, with Naito being a traitor, the chances of the plan going through the way that it was drawn out is basically non-existent. While Avery, Johnson, and Crowder would be there to try and stop him, nobody knows how many people are turned against the UNSC. All 12 Spartans were spread across 4 Prowlers of Sierra Force to take by force if it was necessary. While they are all getting ready to jump into slipspace, Dagger Force would be going first, and the flight commander, Gite, sees the insignia and wonders where the hell he got it. John tells her that Crowder wanted to see how it looked on a suit of Mjolnir. Guess he liked it. Hector Naito comes over comms and has everyone prepped to jump. Gite goes to command the rest of the Prowlers of Sierra Force to follow, but John tells her to wait. She explains that timing of the operation is everything, but he interrupts her again, telling her to wait, then hands her a data chip with the new orders. They listen to Crowder telling her the scuttlebutt about the spy amongst the UNSC, and it just so happens to be true. And she is to consider Hector Naito relieved of duty. Gite looks to Master Chief and asks if he knew about this whole time. Well, yeah, they were the ones that Naito was trying to kill. She confirms if that's why there are Spartans in the command deck of all her Prowlers, and John nods. And they listen to the rest of the message, which gives different vector in which to travel slipspace and letting her know that John is now in charge of Sierra Force. She seems to think on it for a second, but then just looks to John, telling him that she will follow his orders, but asks him not to get them all killed. Aboard the Ghost Song, Naito's Prowler, Johnson is on the bridge with Crowther as they arrive at Naraka, or Zoest, waiting for Sierra Force to appear. When they don't show, Naito says that there's no point in attacking if Sierra Force isn't in position, even though the plan was to attack whether they were detected or not, because even knowing the location, Prowlers could be difficult to detect. Then he wants to send a burst transmission to see if they are indeed in position, which is a problem when you don't know the position of who you're trying to communicate with. Naito taps his fingers in thought on the armrest of his chair, seeming to think on this for a second. The breaking point in protocol that causes Crowther to relieve him of duty is when he tries to command the burst transmission be done in the open, attempting to give away the position of Sierra Force. Johnson wields 2 magnums and attempts to give Crowther one of them when one of the other flight officers opens fire on Crowther, killing the man with a headshot before turning out to shoot at Avery. Avery is able to put 2 rounds into the chair of Naito and killing one of the other officers before having to retreat out of the room due to the amount of fire he was taking. His armor was good stuff, but it wasn't Mjolnir. When running down the hallway, he comes across 3 men with M7 submachine guns. Unable to know if they are a legitimate security detail or traitors, Avery has to kill all 3. After picking up 2 of the M7s, he comms the go code, Red Eagle, letting all ODSTs to take the Prowler by force. Nellyham and 2 other Black Daggers show up from the bay, letting Johnson know that his Red Eagle was a bit late. Everyone was vac from the bay a couple of seconds after. They barely had stayed inside, but thankfully they were all suited up, so they aren't dead. They just need to be picked up ASAP so they don't run out of air. They decide at this point that they can still take the ship and go get their guys. Unfortunately, before they get too far into their plan, they themselves are vacked out, watching as all of the Prowlers left to try and get Sierra Force caught by the Covenant. However, Avery decides to activate his locator beacon to draw the Covenant in their direction, also the direction of Ghost Flight. Nelly yells at him and asks if he's trying to get them killed, but then he just tells her that no, he's trying to get Hector Naito killed. During all that, Sierra Force was still on its way, blind to everything that had just happened. With the alarm going, the sensor operator figures out what it is. Turns out there's a distress beacon going off transmitting in the open, so attracting all the Covenant that are in the range. It was Sergeant Johnson's. At first, nothing else is picked up, but eventually chatter over 1st Platoon was picked out. Gite asks about Covenant response, and there are 10 ships on their way, but too early to tell if it's because of them or the distress beacon. John says that he thinks that they need to stick to the plan. Gite acknowledges and tells everyone that it's what they're going to do. Others protest since there's only 90 minutes of air in the ODST armor, but she snaps, telling them to do their damn jobs. They only had 1 shot at this, and going back for them could easily get them killed, if not cause the mission to fail, and the Covenant would keep freely pushing into human-occupied space. After a short time, the beacon goes out, and the Covenant seem to be on a vector that will bypass it. After further analysis, they figure out that the Covenant seem to be heading towards their original vector, the one that they were given before the new orders. John asks if they could be chasing Ghost Flight, and the officer says that it's possible, but he doesn't understand why, and is cut off by Gite. She was thinking the same thing as John. The Prowlers of Ghost Flight were trying to lead the Covenant into them, and in time they entered slip space and left. Gite looked to John since he looked surprised. He said he didn't expect all 3 Prowlers to be insurrectionists. How could Naito recruit that many traitors into an Oni division? Apparently though, over time, with enough time, he could replace the entire crew and bring in his own. Could take decades in the end, but for the Innies, that was no problem. Detonations are seen in the distance, so they prep to do their insertion, while the Covenant defense force is out of position. When they get closer, they realize that there's a huge defense built up right where they wanted to attack, as if the plan of attack was given to them. So instead, John decides that they could just dive down under the defenders and land near the elevators and just take those up into the facilities. So Sierra Force splits up and goes to different drop points, increasing the odds of success. When she tells him that pickup won't be an option, he tells her that they will find their own ride home, if they live to need it anyways. The Master Chief leaves the hangar to get with Blue Team and the Black Daggers attached to his unit. The Prowlers get to the drop point after surviving the voyage to drop the soldiers off, sending all its missiles towards the Covenant troops' ground side. Then everyone disembarks and makes for the elevator, and then the Prowler dips out for the sky. Fred and Kelly report the only threat ahead is most likely some injured Jiralhane. As Gite is leaving, she tells John that Gold Team's Prowlers had to retreat or risk being destroyed, and Green Team's ship was destroyed, but there's chatter of them picking up other surviving Black Daggers and pushing ahead. So not all bad, but not so good either. No confirmed killed Spartans, but plenty of other UNSC personnel had to be sacrificed. So basically, Gold Team is gone, but Green Team potentially still pushing ahead, but there's no confirmation of that. To deal with the surviving Jiralhane, Kelly and Fred flank with rocket launcher while John and Linda push some haulage sleds forward. Then instead of shooting a rocket launcher himself, he has Chavez, a giant ODST, move into position to fire upon the Jiralhane. After firing 2 rounds, he goes to reload without pulling out of position, and he's hit with a bruise shot, causing him to drop the spanker. John fires on the position until Kelly calls clear. He looks back to Chavez and calls for a medic. Lieutenant Smallbear says that there's nothing that could really be done for him in the position that they were in. So they give him some painkillers and set a Fury tactical nuke to detonate in 40 minutes. And then they all boarded the elevator. The Covenant were having issues of their own at this point. The Minor Prophet, Survey, had called Tel Zatulai back from his combat vigil in order to get him to admit that it was a bad idea to go to Zoest. The First Blade the entire time has an urge to slay this stupid Sanchium, but he controls himself. Survey is convinced that the attack is a diversion, and the real attack will be heading towards High Charity, which is just stupid, but he wants to save his own skin and look good in front of the Prophets. So, Tel pushes past the Sanchium and confronts the Fleetmaster. Nizat believes that he made a huge mistake coming to Zoest, taking full responsibility, even though it was the First Blade that pushed for it, which gains Nizat some respect from the First Blade. He reassures the Fleetmaster that it's still early in the attack, so they will eventually push past the outposts. They move to the hologram and look at the battle. Zatulai points to a skirmish in lower orbit, and Survey interrupts saying that it's nothing. But Nizat tells him that it's a surface raid. They were trying to get to the skylifts. The First Blade asks if they destroyed the skylifts, but they hadn't. He then goes to leave, stating that he should have been notified of this sooner, but Nizat grabs him and asks what is happening. He explains to the Fleetmaster that the humans are taking the skylifts into the facility. Survey says to just reverse the skylift, but both Sanghili look at him in shock. They can't just send the humans planetside, because it would be defilement of the planet, and heresy, if you will. So the Fleetmaster tells the First Blade to go and kill them while he still can. Going up the elevator, John starts to second-guess the 40-minute timer delay on the nuclear weapon they armed at the bottom. The Covenant elevator wasn't as fast as he thought it would be. Plus, even though they were thousands of kilometers up the elevator by now, there would be no knowing how the electromagnetic field of the elevator would react to the detonation. Also, how the shockwave could travel up the tube would be a big issue as well. According to his HUD, they would have about 3 minutes and 30 seconds to get to safety after reaching the top. But then of course things changed. The elevator began to slow, and the window shrunk to just 22 seconds. When they're about 50 seconds from the top, John has Fred and Kelly go up to try and create a path for everyone to get through. 2 fire teams went to support them as well. They reach the top, the Spartans unloading rockets on the unsuspecting enemies. Unfortunately, when the ODSTs tried to support them, they were caught in kill zones and crossfire from over 200 Covenant troops. Fred calls out a transit tube behind them that they can use for cover. John acknowledges and then looks to the LT and tells her that Blue Team needs a rolling screen to cover them while they make way to the tube. She hesitates, but then looks to him knowing what he means and says that they can do it. It's a shitty situation to be in, but in order to complete this mission, it's what needs to be done. So basically the ODSTs would draw attention to them so the blue team could get to safety for sure. More than likely getting most, if not all, the ODSTs killed. They reach the top and the Black Daggers engage the Covenant with grenades and rockets while blue team headed to the objective. Along the way, Spartans kill anything in their line of sight, and when reaching the tube, they call everyone else to disengage. Only a few were still alive at this point. John watched as an elite walked through someone after cutting them in half. John unloads an entire clip into it, killing him. Small Bear was just 10 meters away, being chased by a Healy, but Linda dropped it with her M99. However, the shockwave from the detonation finally reached them and knocked everyone to the ground outside the tube. Shockingly, Small Bear was still alive and fine actually, but the depression had hit, sucking everything back out. Out of reach, to be helped, she went flying but told John to carry on and make it count. John dents the hatch with a punch, but then he turns around seeing the rest of blue team and 6 ODSTs. He calms down and pushes forward. They find some large cargo sleds that Fred teaches everyone how to drive, apparently similar to the Banshee without guns. They all mount up and plan to drive around the ring, stopping at each facility to hide octas, so big nukes, and create depression barriers so they don't get hit with the shockwaves. They hit multiple facilities, and after the 6th facility, the Black Daggers told John that they wouldn't be able to leave their position. All of them were either dead or immobile. John praised the man for getting as far as they did, and the mic cuts off before getting a full response. He time-stamped their conversation so he could recommend them for accommodation, assuming that they, make it off as well. They had stopped to see what was going on in orbit around them, and they see that green team must have landed because 3 facilities on the other side were already destroyed. With their 6, that made 9 total facilities, and the ring was already starting to destabilize. Plus, there was a Banshee flight trying to intercept them, possibly more of the red-armored Spartan Hunter teams. Fred jokes that John shouldn't be taking a nap, but he has Fred come look at this gigantic ship that is being created, nearby, about 20 kilometers long. So they all agree that they should just go over and destroy it, then steal some Banshees and dip out before detonation. Easy stuff. They go back to their cargo sleds and move to the next facility. Being the most poorly defended of all the facilities, the Jackals and Grunts killed each other more than anything. They set another octa and prime the detonation. Then John and Linda use their M99 to shoot a section of the wall, hoping that they can get out through it and fly their way to the giant ship. After a few rounds start to dent the wall, Fred jumps and kicks it, and causing all of them to fly into space. They regroup and use thrusters to get to the waypoint. While on the way to the hangar, they see Banshees heading to cut them off 20 decks above, not knowing that they are no longer in transit tubes, so the elite fighting force would die never seeing a Spartan, assuming all goes as planned. They drop into the hangar and kill 4 workers with ease. No security detail, so it was no struggle, and confirmed that there was at least 4 Banshees in the hangar that were still operable. After that, it was time to race for the grav lift with the nuclear ordnance. When they get close enough, John has them initiate. Back with the first blade, Tel Zatulai arrived at the facility around the ring with his 2 Jiralhane bodyguards, asking the Kig-Yar nearby what's going on. They say that the ring was shut down due to a breach in the walls. The Kig-Yar also states that they were warned of 4 armored humans wreaking havoc, but they didn't believe them. The first blade doesn't even let it finish before ordering the rest of his red armored Battlestar group to follow, realizing that the Spartans were going around them to attack. Back with the Spartans, John and Kelly trigger the Havocs for a 2-minute countdown and notice the red and black armored elite coming toward them. So obviously Tel had gone there and come back in the time that they had flown across space and, gotten into the hangar. They lob the nuclear bombs into the anti-grav lift and start running for the Banshees. The elite in front of Kelly is dropped by Linda's M99, and the one in front of John goes up in a ball of flame after being hit with Fred's spanker. More of the warriors come out and chase after them. John finds that odd, since if he were in their position, he would have went for the damn bombs. But elites would rather kill their enemy than save their own lives. The more embarrassing part for the Covenant is that they actually step over the bombs when chasing them. They continue to fight while still trying to retreat, and John unloads a magazine into an elite, unable to drop the shields. When he pulls up the grenade launcher, he is hit in the shoulder by a plasma rifle, throwing off his aim, and the elite jumps on him swinging his red plasma sword. John deflects it and caves in the alien's knee before pulling his magnum and shooting the elite in the face, dropping the shields and filling the faceplate with blood. The second elite, which is Zatulai, is quicker and sidesteps his shots and attacks with the sword to his head. John gets closer instead of dodging and puts his shotgun to the head of the elite. Again, the elite avoids the shot directly, but his shields do go down. Zatulai tries to go for a coup de grace by grabbing hold of John's shoulder. Unfortunately for him, immobilizing a Spartan with pain isn't possible. John just thinks about moving his arm to the forearm of the alien and pushes the sword down, severing it about halfway. But Zatulai doesn't give up just yet, pushing his sword towards John's head, but the Spartan leans back and catches the tip of it on the side of his neck. Panic strikes for a second due to the possibility of his carotid artery being struck, but he quickly realizes that if that were the case, he would already start passing out. So he takes this shotgun, points it at the elite's foot, and fires, causing the alien to loosen his grip. which John takes advantage and forces them to the ground. On top of Zatlai, John takes the barrel of his shotgun and slams it into the elite's sword arm while still holding onto his hand. He is so amped up because of the cut of his neck that he just keeps slamming even after the wrist snaps the other way. The sword winks out and Kelly gently takes the shotgun from him and then blasts Zatlai in the face. She makes sure John is okay and they run for the Banshees. After boarding and getting ready to leave, they see two brutes running toward them, Orsoon and Castor. John decides to leave them since they need to get as far as possible before the Gamma waves take out the Banshees. So they fly out of the hangar bay and make a mad dash away from the detonation site, not knowing if there would even be a Prowler to pick them up if they could get enough distance anyways. He even starts thinking about the future, whether or not he should volunteer for every mission, because it won't just be support troops that got killed. Spartan lives would be lost, since after all, they are not immortal. But then again, there isn't really much of a choice. If not them, then who? The mission here at Naraka was a success, but it's not going to stop the Covenant forever. Wherever they go, the Spartans will need to be there to try and stop them. John calls for a pickup, waiting for a response after the Banshees go out. A single-click response is picked up, and Captain Nellie Ham speaks over comms, telling them that she's on her way to pick them up. In the end, Fleetmaster Nizat Kevarosi is watching his own planet burn. 7 previous times he had watched the planet being glassed and destroyed. Unfortunately for the Covenant, this time it was one of their own. Survey shows up and points to the planet, asking how he could let it happen. Lukosi, his steward, tells the Sanshium that they didn't let anything happen. Can't really start a war and expect whomever it is to not fight back. Survey says the hierarchs will not be pleased to hear them being blamed for the catastrophe that happened here. Lukosi tells Nizat that he has news regarding Tel Zatulai. In his rage, seeing that the mighty ring of abundance breaking apart, he forgot about the first blade, hoping it would be good news. He was mistaken. Zatulai was killed by the Spartans. Castor and Orsoon watched him die. Survey then assumes that since they saw it happen, they were at least able to dispatch the Spartans themselves. But that was not the case. Survey belittles the Jiralhane for not thinking for themselves to attack them, but Lukosi tells the Sanshium that they were lucky to get out alive. Nizat confirms that the Spartans are still out there aboard their Banshees. Lukosi tells him that rescue teams are picking up what they can. 20 dead ODSTs and 8 survivors were picked up already. Survey interrupts by pushing his chair between the two Sangheli, calling Nizat an idiot, before berating him for allowing his shipmasters to take survivors, until Lukosi silences him, with a blue blade causing the chair to drop. He then deactivates the sword, handing it to Nizat, apologizing for what he had done. He just couldn't stand by and watch the Sanshium insult his fleetmaster. Nizat tells him to think nothing of it. He will just tell the hierarchs that he died battling for the faith, which really wasn't that much of a lie. He then starts to contemplate why only one type of human had been found. Were the Spartans that much stronger than the other humans? Or was it just the armor that they wore? We know it's both, but this early into the conflict, nobody really knows shit about each other. Nizat finally asks how the preliminary interrogations have gone, and no matter how much the ODSTs are beaten or shocked, all they do is laugh. We end with John back on the Prowler Night Watch, where he is enjoying a cigar that he was given by Avery Johnson. They were all sitting amongst all those who were vacked by Hector Nieto. All 3 teams of Spartans and 2 other survivors from the orbital ring are all chilling around. Johnson was wrapped in a heated blanket while taking in oxygen, since he was the last person picked up among those who were booted out. He had ran out of oxygen in his suit, and the integrated heating system had failed, so he almost froze to death and was suffocating. The Spartans, along with Avery Johnson, watched as parts of the ring plummeted into the planet, causing large detonations as they hit, almost like a celebration, cheering on each explosion. John thinks of it as the best party he had ever attended. He wished that the 21st Space Battalion were able to do the same. But since they got back, only 11 more ODSTs were picked up, so they were having a different type of gathering. John wanted to go and give his condolences, but he was told that it would be better to give it more time. Johnson comments on all the Covenant ships being destroyed, and Daisy says that there should be 3 more Prowlers with them. Ghost Flight, obviously, after getting all the ODSTs killed that they did, and killing Colonel Crowther. She's pissed that they might get away with it. Fred tells her that they won't, but that doesn't pacify her. Kelly asks if she's going to go AWOL after them, and Daisy admits that she's down for that. John tells her that they deserve what's coming to them, but going about it that way would not be how Crowther would want it done. She says whatever it takes, that's the Spartan way, but John tells her that's only in the battlefield. She rolls her eyes, and Johnson jumps in, telling her that just because they got lucky with Silent Storm doesn't mean that they won the whole damn war. He almost continues, but decides to stop and let John handle it. John confirms what the sergeant said and further explains that they will need to work harder and get each other's backs if they are going to stop the Covenant invasion. Daisy salutes John, and John says that they will get Hector Nieto at some point. He wants to kill the Spartans after all, so he will be back, and when he does, they will get him. Johnson tells John that he couldn't have said it better himself. And that is where Halo Silent Storm ends. Hope you enjoyed the summary. Comment down below if you have any comments or questions, and I'll do my best to respond. I do apologize for how long this was. I didn't think that through when I wrote this summary. Like and subscribe to know when more videos come out. Halo Oblivion will be next, so I'll see you there. Thanks for watching. Chickchang out.